The first shot came without warning, piercing the still desert air as Molly Wilson crouched behind an overturned wagon, her breath shallow and her hands trembling from more than just fear. The fever that had plagued her for days now burned through her body like wildfire, making the Arizona Territory of 1875 seem even more unforgiving than it already was. "Hold on there, miss," a deep voice called out as a second bullet whizzed overhead. "I'm coming to get you." Molly's vision swam, the landscape before her blurring into smears of dusty brown and faded blue. She had left St. Louis 3 weeks ago with such hope, dreams of teaching in the new frontier filling her heart. Now, with her wagon train scattered by bandits and illness ravaging her body, those dreams seemed as distant as the eastern cities she'd left behind. Through the haze of her fever, she saw him, a tall figure moving with surprising grace despite the gunfire, dodging between sparse cover as he made his way toward her. His hat was pulled low, a bandana covering the lower half of his face against the dust, but his eyes were startlingly clear and determined as they locked with hers. "Can you move?" he asked, sliding into position beside her. Up close, she could see the dust coating his denim and leather, the worn pistol in his hand suggesting he was no stranger to trouble. Molly tried to answer, but her parched lips could barely form words. I'm ill," she managed. "Leave me, save yourself." The man, clearly a cowboy from his attire and the confidence with which he handled his weapon, shook his head firmly. "Not happening, miss. Not while I'm here to guard your life." Something in his voice, a certainty that brooked no argument, gave Molly a sliver of hope even as another volley of shots peppered the ground nearby. "Name's Adam Westfield," he said, checking his ammunition without taking his eyes off the direction of the attackers. "And I don't make a habit of leaving ladies to die in the desert. Molly Wilson," she whispered, her voice cracking, "schoolteacher, or was supposed to be." Adam's eyes softened momentarily. "Well, Miss Wilson, I suspect you'll still get your chance to teach, but first we need to get you somewhere safe and tend to whatever's got you burning up like this." He peered cautiously over the wagon's edge, then ducked back down. 3 riders. "Likely after whatever valuables your wagon train was carrying." His eyes narrowed as he formulated a plan. "Can you hold on to me if I carry you?" Molly nodded weakly, though she wasn't entirely certain she could. The world kept tilting at alarming angles every time she moved her head. "My horse is hidden in that gully about 50 yards back," Adam said, pointing to a depression in the land. "When I give the word, I'm going to create a distraction, then we're going to make a run for it. All you need to do is hold on." Molly wanted to protest. The fever made her feel like she weighed 1,000 pounds, and she couldn't imagine being anything but a burden to this stranger. But the alternative was almost certainly death, either from the bandits or the illness that was steadily consuming her. "Ready?" Adam asked, not really expecting an answer. He pulled a small metal object from his pocket, a mirror, Molly realized, and angled it to catch the sun. The flash of reflected light was followed by immediate gunfire from the bandits. While they were distracted by the flash, Adam holstered his pistol, scooped Molly into his arms, and sprinted toward the gully with surprising speed. The movement sent waves of pain through Molly's body, but she bit her lip to keep from crying out, knowing that sound could give away their position. True to his word, a magnificent chestnut stallion stood waiting in the shallow ravine, reins loosely tied to a scrubby bush. In one fluid motion, Adam deposited Molly onto the saddle, then swung up behind her, securing her against his chest with one strong arm while the other gathered the reins. "Hold on, Miss Wilson," he whispered into her ear as he urged the horse forward. "We've got a ways to go." Molly tried to respond, but the combination of movement, fever, and exhaustion proved too much. The last thing she remembered was the steady beat of hoofbeats beneath her and the surprising gentleness of Adam's grip as darkness claimed her. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Cool cloth on her forehead, the smell of pine and smoke. A low, humming voice singing something soft and indistinct. Molly struggled to open her eyes, finding even that simple action required tremendous effort. "There you are," Adam's voice came from somewhere nearby. Was starting to worry you might sleep right through to next week. Molly blinked, trying to focus. She was in a small cabin, lying on a narrow bed with several blankets tucked around her. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across rough-hewn walls. Where? She began, but her throat was too dry to continue. Adam appeared at her side, carefully lifting her head to help her drink from a tin cup filled with cool water. My place, he explained as she sipped gratefully. About 20 miles from where I found you. Remote enough that those bandits won't be finding us, close enough to my friend's place that I could fetch some medicine. As her vision cleared, Molly got her first proper look at her rescuer. Without the dust and danger of their first meeting, she could see he was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 28 or 30 at most. His face was tanned from the sun but clean-shaven, with strong features and eyes the color of the summer sky. His light brown hair was a bit too long, curling slightly at the collar of his simple cotton shirt. "How long have I been here?" she asked, managing to sit up slightly despite the weakness that still plagued her. 3 days, Adam replied, moving back to a small table where he appeared to be preparing some kind of broth. "The fever broke last night, thank the Lord. Doc Jenkins said it was a close thing." "Doctor?" Molly frowned, trying to remember any visit from a physician. Adam nodded. "Friend of mine. Rode out when I sent word. Said you had a bad case of influenza, probably made worse by exhaustion and dehydration." He paused, giving her an appraising look. "He also said you were lucky, another day out there and we wouldn't be having this conversation." The gravity of her situation hit Molly all at once, and tears welled up in her eyes before she could stop them. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. Adam seemed uncomfortable with her gratitude, shrugging as he stirred whatever was in the pot. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Molly said firmly, despite her weakness. "They wouldn't have. You risked your life for a complete stranger." He was quiet for a moment before responding. "My pa always said a man's character is measured by what he does when no one's looking." A small smile touched his lips. "Though I suppose you were looking, just not in any condition to judge." That drew a weak laugh from Molly, which quickly turned into a cough. Adam was immediately at her side again, helping her drink more water. "Easy there," he cautioned. "You're on the mend, but you need to take it slow. Doc says you need at least a week of rest before even thinking about traveling." This reminder of her situation sobered Molly quickly. "My position," she said anxiously. "I was supposed to report to the schoolhouse in Silver Creek by next week. If I don't arrive, they'll give the job to someone else." Adam's expression grew thoughtful. "Silver Creek, you say? That's only about 30 miles from here." He set down the cup and returned to the pot. "As it happens, I deliver horses there regular. I could send word to the town council explaining the situation." Relief flooded through Molly. "You would do that?" "Sure," Adam said, ladling broth into a bowl. "Though I reckon once they hear you survived bandits and nearly fatal illness just to get to their little town, they'll be mighty impressed. Might even give you a raise before you start." His teasing tone brought color to Molly's cheeks that had nothing to do with fever. For the first time, she became acutely aware of her disheveled appearance, and the fact that she was wearing what appeared to be one of Adam's shirts rather than her own clothing. Seeing her discomfort, Adam quickly explained, "Mrs. Jenkins, the doc's wife, she helped get you changed and cleaned up when they were here. Your clothes are drying outside. They needed a good wash after all that travel." "Oh," Molly said, relieved but still embarrassed. "Thank you." Adam nodded, bringing the bowl of broth to her bedside. "Think you can manage some food? It's nothing fancy, just rabbit stew, but it'll help you get your strength back." The rich aroma made Molly's stomach growl unexpectedly, and both of them laughed. "I'll take that as a yes," Adam said, helping position the bowl so she could eat. The next few days passed in a similar fashion, with Adam tending to Molly's needs while also maintaining his small ranch. She learned he was primarily a horse trainer, breaking and preparing wild mustangs for sale to ranchers, the army, and stagecoach companies throughout the territory. As her strength returned, Molly began to help with small tasks around the cabin, first just folding laundry or peeling vegetables while seated. then gradually taking on more as she recovered. She discovered Adam was surprisingly well-read for a cowboy, with a small collection of books that he admitted to reading during the long winter evenings. "Most folks around here think it's a waste of time," he confessed one evening as they sat by the fire, Molly working on mending one of her dresses while Adam cleaned his saddle. "Reading stuff that isn't the Bible or a wanted poster, that is. And what do you think?" Molly asked, curious about this contradictory man who could track bandits across the desert, but also quoted Shakespeare when he thought she was sleeping. Adam's hands stilled on the leather. "I think there's beauty in words, same as there is in mountains or horses or sunsets. Different kind, maybe, but still worth appreciating." The sincerity in his voice touched something in Molly, a recognition of a kindred spirit she hadn't expected to find in this harsh land. "That's why I wanted to teach," she said softly. "To share that beauty with children who might otherwise never know it exists." Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Silver Creek's lucky to have you coming their way, Miss Wilson." A week after her rescue, Molly was well enough to venture outside the cabin for short periods. Adam's ranch was modest but well-maintained, situated in a small valley with mountains visible in the distance. A corral held several horses in various stages of training, and a small garden provided vegetables to supplement the game Adam hunted. "It's beautiful here," Molly remarked as they sat on the porch after supper, watching the sunset paint the sky in vivid oranges and purples. "It's not much," Adam replied, though pride was evident in his voice. "But it's mine, free and clear. No debts, no obligations except to those horses and myself." "That's more than most people can claim," Molly observed. "Back east, it seems everyone owes something to someone." Adam glanced at her curiously. "What made you leave, if you don't mind my asking?" "Most women I know wouldn't trade city comforts for frontier hardships without good reason." Molly considered the question, absent-mindedly twisting a loose thread from her sleeve. "I suppose I wanted something that was mine," she finally said. "My parents died when I was young. I was raised by an aunt who made it clear I was an obligation, not a joy. When I finished school, I started teaching in St. Louis, but I was still living in my aunt's house, following her rules, being the person she expected me to be." She looked out at the expansive landscape, still marveling at its vastness. "When I saw the advertisement for a teacher in Arizona Territory, it felt like a door opening, a chance to define myself by my own choices rather than someone else's expectations." Adam was quiet for a long moment. "Brave thing to do," he said finally. "Stepping into the unknown like that." Molly smiled wryly. "It didn't feel brave when those bandits attacked our wagon train. It felt foolish." "Nah," Adam disagreed. "Bravery isn't about not being scared, it's about doing what needs doing despite the fear." He gave her a sidelong glance. "And from what I saw, you were keeping your head when plenty of men would have lost theirs." His praise warmed her more than it should have, and Molly found herself studying his profile in the fading light. There was a strength to Adam that went beyond the physical, a quiet confidence and integrity that she found increasingly attractive as the days passed. The thought startled her, and she quickly looked away, reminding herself that in a few days she would be continuing on to Silver Creek to begin her new position. This interlude, pleasant as it had become, was temporary. Still, as they sat in companionable silence watching night claim the desert, Molly couldn't help wondering what it might be like to stay. The next morning, Adam announced he needed to ride to a neighboring ranch to discuss a horse sale. "I should be back by sundown," he told Molly as he saddled his horse. "You feeling strong enough to be on your own for the day?" "Of course," Molly assured him, though she was surprised by how much she would miss his company. "I've imposed on your hospitality long enough as it is." Adam frowned slightly. "It's no imposition, Miss Wilson. Truth be told, it's been nice having someone to talk to besides the horses." Molly smiled at that. "Even so, I should start preparing for my journey to Silver Creek. I'm nearly recovered now." Something flickered across Adam's face, disappointment, perhaps. But it was gone so quickly Molly thought she might have imagined it. "Well," he said, swinging up into the saddle, "we can discuss that when I return." There's stew left from last night if you get hungry, and plenty of water from the well." After he rode off, Molly set about putting the cabin in order, determined to repay some small portion of Adam's kindness. She swept the floors, washed the breakfast dishes, and even attempted to bake bread using the supplies in his modest pantry. The physical activity felt good after days of enforced rest, though she was careful not to overexert herself. By midday, however, she found herself growing tired and decided to rest for a while. She was awakened by the sound of hoofbeats approaching, but something about the rhythm told her it wasn't Adam returning. Caution made her reach for the rifle Adam kept above the door before stepping onto the porch. 3 riders approached, none of them familiar. They pulled up short when they saw her, exchanging glances that immediately put Molly on edge. "Afternoon, madam," the lead rider called, touching the brim of his hat with false politeness. "Don't believe we've had the pleasure." "You new to these parts?" Molly kept the rifle visible but pointed downward. "Just passing through," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Mr. Westfield should be back shortly if you have business with him." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Westfield, huh? Well, we do have some business to settle." He dismounted, and his companions followed suit. "Mind if we wait inside? Sun's mighty hot today." "I'm afraid I can't invite you in," Molly said firmly, "but you're welcome to water your horses at the trough." The man's friendly facade slipped a notch. "That's not very hospitable, miss, especially when we've ridden all this way." Molly tightened her grip on the rifle. Nevertheless, Mr. Westfield would prefer that his home remain private in his absence. The 3 men exchanged looks again, and the leader's hand drifted toward his holster. "Thing is, I don't much care what Westfield prefers. He's got something that belongs to me and I aim to collect." Before Molly could respond, the sound of another horse approaching drew everyone's attention. Adam rode into view, pulling up sharply when he saw the tableau before his cabin. His expression hardened as he recognized the visitors. "Blackburn," he said coldly to the leader, "didn't expect to see you out this way." "Westfield," the man Blackburn sneered, "thought you'd be gone longer, was just getting acquainted with your lady friend here." Adam dismounted slowly, his movements deliberate as he positioned himself between Molly and the men. "Miss Wilson is a schoolteacher headed for Silver Creek," he said evenly. "She's got nothing to do with our business." Blackburn's eyes narrowed. "Our business, as you call it, is simple. You took something of mine and I want it back." "I won fair and square," Adam replied, his stance casual but alert. "Cards on the table, witnesses all around. Not my fault you bet more than you could afford to lose." The tension in the air was palpable, and Molly found herself holding her breath, the rifle still clutched in her hands, though she doubted her ability to use it effectively if violence erupted. "That horse was worth twice what you gave for it," Blackburn spat. "You knew I was drunk." Adam's expression remained impassive. A man's responsible for his own actions, drunk or sober. That's the code out here, or used to be. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Blackburn laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Always the righteous one, ain't you, Westfield?" "Well, I ain't leaving without what's mine." "Then I suggest you make camp," Adam replied. "Because that horse is sold and gone, delivered to the army fort at Davis last week." Blackburn's face darkened with rage. "You're lying." "Check the corral if you don't believe me," Adam said, gesturing toward the enclosure where his horses grazed. "That black stallion isn't among them." One of Blackburn's companions whispered something to him, and after a moment of visible internal struggle, Blackburn seemed to reach a decision. "This ain't over, Westfield," he said, mounting his horse again. "Not by a long shot." Adam remained silent, watching as the 3 men rode away, waiting until they were well out of sight before turning to Molly. "You all right?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Molly nodded, finally lowering the rifle. "They didn't do anything besides talk," she assured him. "Though I admit I was frightened until you arrived." Adam took the rifle from her hands, checking it automatically before returning it to its place above the door. "I apologize you had to deal with that. Blackburn's had a grudge against me since I won that stallion from him in a poker game 6 months back. He was a fine horse, but more trouble than he was worth, with Blackburn showing up every few weeks demanding him back. So you really did sell him?" Molly asked, following Adam inside the cabin. "Had to," Adam said with a shrug. "Blackburn wasn't going to let it go, and I figured removing the cause of contention was the simplest solution." He paused, noticing the freshly swept floor and the smell of baking bread. "You've been busy." Molly felt herself blush. "It seemed the least I could do, given your hospitality." Adam's smile was warm. "Didn't take you for the domestic type, Miss Wilson. What with your teaching ambitions?" "One can be educated and still know how to keep a home," Molly replied, a touch defensively. "Besides, I've always found baking soothing." Adam held up his hands in surrender. "No offense meant. It's a pleasant surprise, is all." The bread, when they tried it with dinner, was only slightly overdone, a fact Adam tactfully ignored as he declared it delicious. The encounter with Blackburn had left them both on edge, however, and conversation was somewhat strained until Adam finally addressed the elephant in the room. "About Silver Creek," he began, setting down his fork. "I've been thinking. It might be best if I accompany you there rather than sending you on the stage." Molly looked up in surprise. "That's very kind, but surely you have responsibilities here." "Nothing that can't wait a few days," Adam replied. "And after today's visit from Blackburn, I'd feel better seeing you safely to your destination personally." Molly considered this. On one hand, she was eager to prove she could manage on her own. Wasn't that the whole point of coming west? On the other, the memory of Blackburn's threatening demeanor was still fresh, and the thought of traveling alone now seemed more foolhardy than independent. "If you're certain it's no trouble," she said finally. Adam nodded, his expression unreadable. "We can leave day after tomorrow if that suits. Give you one more day to regain your strength." That night, as Molly lay on the bed that Adam had insisted she continue using while he slept on a pallet by the fire, she found herself both anticipating and dreading the journey to Silver Creek. She was eager to begin her new position, to meet her students, to establish herself in the community. But these 2 weeks with Adam had awakened feelings. She hadn't anticipated a connection that went beyond gratitude for her rescue. She told herself it was natural to form an attachment to someone who had saved her life, who had nursed her through illness, who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. There was something about Adam Westfield, his quiet strength, his unexpected intellect, his unwavering integrity that called to her in a way no man ever had before. But Silver Creek awaited, and she had made commitments. Dreams she had nurtured for years were finally within reach. To abandon them now for feelings that might be fleeting, that might not even be reciprocated, would be foolish. With these thoughts circling in her mind, Molly finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. The next day passed quickly as they prepared for the journey. Adam repaired Molly's trunk, which had been damaged during the bandit attack but recovered from the wagon site during one of his scouting trips. Molly washed and mended her clothing, grateful that most of her possessions had survived. As evening approached, they sat once more on the porch, watching the sunset in what had become their nightly ritual. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken words, and several times Molly thought Adam was about to say something significant, only to have him change the subject or lapse into silence. Finally, as darkness fell and they prepared to head inside, Adam turned to her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Molly," he said, using her given name for the first time, "I know you're set on Silver Creek, and I respect that. But I want you to know that you've always got a place here if you want it." The implications of his words hung in the air between them. Molly's heart raced as she searched for the right response. "I don't know what to say," she admitted softly. "These past weeks have been unexpected in every way." Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "No need to say anything now, just wanted you to know the options there." With that, he held the door for her, and the moment passed, though its echoes remained in Molly's thoughts long into the night. They set out for Silver Creek at dawn, Adam riding his chestnut stallion while Molly rode a gentle mare he had been training. Her trunk and smaller bags were secured on a packhorse that followed behind, led by a rope attached to Adam's saddle. The journey would take most of the day, Adam explained, but they would reach town well before nightfall if they maintained a steady pace. As they rode, Adam pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the area, his knowledge of the territory impressive. He showed her where to find water in the seemingly barren landscape, which plants were edible, which were poisonous. Practical knowledge that might save her life someday, he explained. The desert doesn't forgive mistakes, he told her, but it rewards those who learn its ways. By midday, they had covered a significant distance, stopping to rest the horses and eat a simple meal of jerky, bread, and dried fruit near a small spring. "We're making good time," Adam observed as they prepared to continue. "Should reach Silver Creek by late afternoon at this rate." Molly nodded, surprised by the tug of regret she felt at the thought of their journey ending. These hours spent riding side by side had been pleasant, filled with conversation and laughter that made the miles pass quickly. As they mounted up to resume their travel, the sound of approaching riders made them both tense. Adam's hand moved instinctively to his holster, relaxing only slightly when he saw it was a small group of travelers rather than Blackburn and his men. "Afternoon," called the leader of the group, a middle-aged man driving a wagon with a woman, presumably his wife, beside him. Two younger men rode alongside on horseback. "Road safe up ahead, clear all the way to the junction," Adam confirmed. "You folks headed to Silver Creek," the man nodded. "Name's Peterson. Taking supplies to open a general store there, heard the town's growing fast with the new silver strike." This was news to Molly. "Silver strike, recently? Just last month," the woman on the wagon said eagerly. "They say it's a rich vein, too." Town's already seeing an influx of miners and the businesses that follow them. Adam and Molly exchanged glances. This development would certainly change the nature of the small, quiet town Molly had been expecting. After exchanging a few more pleasantries and travel tips, the groups parted ways, continuing in opposite directions. "Did you know about the silver strike?" Molly asked Adam once they were alone again. He shook his head. "Heard rumors, but nothing confirmed. Changes things, doesn't it?" Molly nodded slowly. "A mining town is very different from what I was told to expect. The advertisement described a small ranching community in need of education for their children." "It was," Adam said thoughtfully, "or it has been until now, but silver changes places fast. Brings in all sorts of people, some good, some not so much." The implications of this hung between them as they rode on. A quiet ranching town was one thing, a booming mining settlement with saloons, gambling halls, and the rougher elements that accompanied sudden wealth was quite another, especially for a single woman. They crested a ridge in late afternoon and paused, looking down at Silver Creek spread out in the valley below. Even from a distance, the changes were evident. New construction dotted the edges of what had clearly been a small, orderly community. Tents and hastily erected wooden structures sprawled beyond the original town boundaries, and the main street bustled with activity visible even from their elevated position. "Looks like the Petersons weren't exaggerating," Adam observed. "That's at least triple the size Silver Creek was last time I delivered horses here." Molly felt a flutter of anxiety. This was not the peaceful frontier town she had envisioned teaching in. "Perhaps it's not as chaotic as it appears from up here," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Adam gave her a measuring look. Only one way to find out. As they rode down into the town, the changes became even more apparent. What had once been a quiet main street now teemed with people, horses, and wagons. New buildings were under construction on every block, the sound of hammers and saws filling the air. Saloons that had clearly opened recently advertised drinks, women, and gambling, their doors swinging constantly as men moved in and out. Molly's heart sank as they passed the third new saloon. This was not the environment she had prepared herself for, not the community where she had imagined making a difference. Adam seemed to sense her distress. "Let's find the town council first," he suggested. "Get the lay of the land before making any decisions." They located the town hall, a modest building that seemed unchanged amidst the chaos of growth around it. Inside, they were directed to Councilman Harrison, a harried-looking man who barely glanced up from the papers on his desk when they entered his office. "Whatever it is, make it quick," he said, not bothering with introductions. "Got 20 matters needing attention before sundown." Adam stepped forward. "Miss Wilson here is your new schoolteacher, supposed to report this week." That got Harrison's attention. He looked up, blinking in surprise as he registered Molly's presence. "Schoolteacher? Oh, right. The council approved that request months ago before." He gestured vaguely toward the window, indicating the transformation outside. "I've come from St. Louis," Molly said, stepping forward. "I was delayed by illness, but I'm ready to begin my duties now." Harrison ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Well, this is awkward. Truth is, miss, circumstances have changed considerably since we sent out that advertisement." Molly's stomach tightened. "In what way?" "Town's tripled in size already, with more arriving daily. Most ain't bringing families, just single men chasing silver. Those that do have children, well," he looked uncomfortable. "Let's just say education ain't their priority right now." "Are you saying there's no longer a position for me?" Molly asked directly, her disappointment evident. Harrison sighed. "The schoolhouse has been repurposed as an assay office, essential for the mining operations, you understand. We could still use a teacher, I suppose, but there's no building, no supplies, and frankly, no budget for it now that all our resources are going toward managing the growth." Molly felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her feet. All her plans, her dreams, her very reason for coming west gone in an instant. "I see," she said stiffly, pride keeping her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Thank you for your time, Councilman Harrison." Adam's hand came to rest supportively at the small of her back as they left the office, a gesture she found herself leaning into despite her distress. Outside, the reality of her situation hit full force. She was thousands of miles from home with no position, no lodging, and limited funds. The town around her was rapidly becoming the sort of place where a respectable woman, especially one alone, would struggle to find safety, let alone purpose. "I don't know what to do," she admitted quietly as they stood on the boardwalk, the bustling street before them a physical manifestation of her shattered plans. Adam was silent for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "We have options," he finally said. "We can find you temporary lodging here while you decide your next move. Or," he hesitated, then continued with careful neutrality, "or you could return with me, take some time to consider your path forward without the pressure of immediate decisions." Molly looked around at the chaotic scene before her, the dust, the noise, the rough men emerging already drunk from saloons despite the early hour. Then she looked at Adam, whose steady presence had become a source of comfort and strength over these past weeks. The decision, when she examined it, wasn't difficult at all. "I think," she said slowly, "that I would like to return with you if the offer still stands." The relief in Adam's eyes was unmistakable. "It stands," he confirmed, "though we should secure rooms for the night. It's too late to start back today." They found lodging at a small hotel that had apparently existed before the silver boom. The elderly couple who ran it seemed overwhelmed by the sudden influx of business, but managed to provide them with 2 clean, if simple, rooms for the night. After a modest dinner in the hotel's dining room, where they were the only customers not discussing mining prospects, Adam and Molly retreated to the small porch at the rear of the building, seeking respite from the increasingly rowdy Main Street. "I should be devastated," Molly said as they sat watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Everything I planned, everything I hoped for, none of it turned out as expected." "Sometimes life has different plans than we do," Adam replied. "Doesn't mean your dreams were wrong, just that they might need adjusting." Molly considered this. "When I left St. Louis, I was so certain I knew what I wanted: independence, purpose, a chance to make a difference." She smiled ruefully. "Now I'm not sure of anything." "Seems to me you're still headed toward those things," Adam observed, "just by a different route than you expected." The comfort of his words, the quiet confidence in his voice made Molly's next question easier to ask. "Earlier, when you said I always had a place at your ranch. What exactly did you mean by that?" Adam was silent for a long moment, and Molly feared she had misinterpreted his offer, had seen more than was intended in his kindness. But when he finally spoke, his voice was low and sincere. "I meant that I've come to care for you, Molly Wilson. More than I expected to, more than might be proper given the circumstances of our meeting." He turned to face her directly. "I know it's sudden, and I know you came west seeking independence, not entanglements, but if you wanted to stay, not just temporarily, but permanently, well, I'd consider myself the luckiest man in the territory." The nakedness of his confession took Molly's breath away. Here was honesty without pretense, feeling without manipulation. In the short time she had known him, Adam had shown her more integrity and kindness than she had experienced in all her years in St. Louis. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, echoing her words from the night before. Adam smiled gently. "You don't have to say anything right now. Take the time you need, I'm not going anywhere." They returned to the ranch the next day, the journey quiet but comfortable, each lost in their own thoughts about the future. When they arrived, everything was as they had left it, peaceful and orderly compared to the chaos of Silver Creek. As Adam helped Molly down from her horse, their hands lingered together a moment longer than necessary, a tacit acknowledgement of the shift in their relationship. "Welcome back," he said softly, and Molly knew he meant more than just a return to the physical location. The following weeks established a new rhythm to their lives. Molly moved into a small cabin adjacent to the main house, a structure Adam had built years earlier as quarters for ranch hands during busy seasons. He insisted she have her own space, a gesture of respect that endeared him to her even more. During the days, Adam worked with his horses while Molly found ways to contribute to the ranch's operation, tending the garden, preparing meals, keeping accounts of expenses and income from horse sales. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch or by the fire, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Molly discovered that Adam had grown up on a ranch in Texas, the son of a horse breeder whose reputation for fair dealing was legendary in the region. When his parents died of influenza within months of each other, Adam had taken his inheritance and moved west, seeking a fresh start away from painful memories. "Pa always said a man makes his own legacy," Adam told her one evening as they sat watching the stars. "Said it wasn't about money or land, but about how you treated others, especially when it cost you something to do right." "He sounds like a wise man," Molly observed. "You remind me of him from the way you describe him." Adam seemed pleased by the comparison. "Highest compliment you could give me," he said, "though I'm still working on living up to his example." In turn, Molly shared stories of her childhood, the early, happy years with parents who had encouraged her love of learning, and the later, more difficult time with her aunt, a woman whose rigid views on propriety had made Molly feel constantly inadequate. She meant well, Molly reflected. But she never understood why books and ideas mattered so much to me. She thought education was wasted on a girl who would just end up married and raising children anyway. "And what do you think?" Adam asked. Molly considered the question. "I think knowledge is never wasted, regardless of one's path in life. A mother who loves learning will raise children who value it too." As September turned to October, bringing cooler temperatures and stunning sunsets that painted the desert in gold and crimson, Molly realized that her feelings for Adam had deepened into something profound and lasting. The independence she had sought in coming west had transformed into something different, but equally valuable: a partnership based on mutual respect and growing affection. One crisp morning, as they rode together to check on a water source in a distant part of the ranch, Adam brought his horse alongside hers. "I've been thinking," he began, his tone casual though Molly sensed underlying nervousness. "There are at least a dozen children within riding distance of the ranch hands' kids, neighboring homesteaders' families. None of them are getting proper schooling." Molly looked at him with interest. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Adam nodded. "That storage building near the south pasture, it's solid, has good light. Wouldn't take much to convert it into a small schoolhouse." He glanced at her, gauging her reaction. "If you were interested in teaching again, that is." The idea took root immediately in Molly's imagination, a small school of her own, children eager for knowledge, the chance to fulfill her purpose after all. I would need books, supplies, she said, already mentally cataloging requirements. Next supply run to Davis, we could order whatever you need, Adam replied, clearly pleased by her enthusiasm. Might not be as grand as what you'd planned in Silver Creek, but it would be better, Molly interrupted, conviction in her voice. These children need education even more, with fewer opportunities to obtain it. Adam's smile was warm. Then it's settled. We'll start work on the building next week. The "we" in his statement wasn't lost on Molly, nor was the implication that he saw their futures as intertwined. The thought filled her with a contentment she hadn't expected to find when she'd left St. Louis months ago. True to his word, Adam began converting the storage building immediately. Neighbors helped, intrigued by the prospect of education for their children without having to send them to distant towns. Within weeks, the transformation was remarkable: windows installed for better light, sturdy benches and tables constructed, a proper blackboard mounted on the wall. By November, everything was ready. Word had spread throughout the area, and on the first day of school, 15 children ranging in age from 6 to 16 arrived, some having ridden for over an hour to attend. As Molly stood before them, introducing herself and outlining her expectations, she caught sight of Adam watching from the doorway, pride evident in his expression. This moment, reaching these eager young minds in this remote place, was everything she had dreamed of, though in a form she could never have anticipated. The weeks that followed were exhausting but deeply satisfying. Molly discovered that frontier children, though often lacking in formal education, possessed practical knowledge and resilience that made them quick learners. They absorbed reading, writing, and arithmetic alongside history, science, and literature, their questions often challenging Molly to expand her own knowledge. Winter arrived with unexpected ferocity in December, bringing snow and bitter cold that forced the cancellation of classes for several days. During one such storm, as Molly and Adam sat by the fire in the main cabin sharing a pot of coffee, a pounding at the door startled them both. Adam opened it to find one of their neighbors, Jacob Turner, snow-covered and frantic. "It's my Emily," he gasped, referring to his 8-year-old daughter, one of Molly's students. "Burning with fever, can't keep nothing down. Sarah's beside herself with worry." Sarah was his wife, pregnant with their third child and unable to travel for help. "How long has she been ill?" Molly asked, already gathering her shawl and the small medical kit she had assembled from supplies ordered with the school materials. "Started yesterday, got worse through the night," Jacob replied, his voice tight with fear. "Never seen a fever take hold so fast." Adam was already pulling on his coat. "Roads to town will be impassable in this weather," he said grimly. "Doc Jenkins won't be able to get through." Molly made a quick decision. "I've nursed fever before," she said, thinking of her own recent illness and the knowledge she had gained from it. "I can help until the doctor can reach them." The ride to the Turner homestead was grueling, the wind driving snow into their faces despite the scarves wrapped around their heads. By the time they arrived, Molly was chilled to the bone but focused entirely on the task ahead. Emily lay in her small bed, her face flushed with fever, her breathing labored. Sarah Turner hovered nearby, her own face pale with exhaustion and fear, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. "Thank God you've come," she whispered as Molly entered the room. "I've tried everything I know." Molly approached the bed, laying a gentle hand on Emily's forehead. The heat radiating from the child was alarming, confirming Jacob's assessment that this was no ordinary illness. "We need to bring the fever down," Molly said decisively. "Cool cloths, and if you have any willow bark, we'll make a tea." For the next several hours, Molly worked tirelessly, applying cool compresses, coaxing sips of willow bark tea between the child's parched lips, monitoring her pulse and breathing. Adam assisted without being asked, fetching fresh snow for the compresses, supporting Emily's head when she needed to drink, offering quiet encouragement to the exhausted parents. As night fell, Emily's condition remained critical. The fever refused to break despite their best efforts, and the child drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes calling out in delirium. "I don't know what else to do," Molly admitted to Adam as they stepped outside briefly to confer. "Without proper medicine." Adam's face was grim in the lantern light. "The storm's letting up. I could try to reach town, bring back the doctor." Molly shook her head. "It's still too dangerous, the temperature's dropping by the hour." She looked back at the cabin where a candle flickered in the window. "We have to manage with what we have." They returned inside to find Emily thrashing in the bed, her small body racked with chills despite the heat radiating from her skin. "It's getting worse," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. A memory surfaced in Molly's mind, something her mother had done years ago when Molly's young brother had been desperately ill with fever. It was risky, perhaps, but they were running out of options. "We need to prepare a bath," she said firmly. "Not cold, but cool. And blankets, all the blankets you have." Jacob looked confused but didn't argue, immediately moving to fulfill her request. Adam helped him bring in water from the well, warming it slightly by the fire before pouring it into the metal tub they placed near the stove. With gentle hands, Molly and Sarah undressed the semi-conscious child and lowered her into the water. Emily whimpered at the contact, her eyes flying open in confusion. "It's all right, sweetheart," Molly soothed, supporting the girl's head above water. "This will help, I promise." For what seemed an eternity, they kept Emily in the bath, gradually allowing the water to cool around her, monitoring her pulse and breathing constantly. When her lips began to take on a bluish tinge, Molly knew it was time. "Now," she directed, and Adam was there instantly, lifting the child from the water and wrapping her in the waiting blankets. They carried her back to the bed, now freshly made with clean linens, and tucked the blankets tightly around her. "What now?" Jacob asked, his voice hoarse with worry. "We wait," Molly replied, settling into a chair beside the bed. "And we pray." Through the long night, they took turns watching over Emily, Molly refusing to leave despite Adam's suggestion that she rest. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving a pristine white landscape outside the windows and an unnatural quiet within the cabin as they waited for any change in the child's condition. It was Adam who noticed at first the slight easing of Emily's breathing, the lessening of the flush in her cheeks. By mid-morning, her skin was merely warm rather than burning, and shortly after noon she opened her eyes, clear and aware for the first time in days. "Miss Wilson," she whispered, recognizing her teacher. "Am I late for school?" The relief in the room was palpable. Sarah collapsing into tears while Jacob stepped outside, ostensibly to check on their livestock but really, Molly suspected, to compose himself away from watching eyes. "School's canceled due to snow," Molly told Emily with a smile, smoothing back the child's damp hair. "But I expect you to rest up so you're ready when we resume." As Emily drifted into natural sleep, Molly finally allowed herself to acknowledge her own exhaustion. She had been awake for well over 24 hours, focused entirely on saving this one precious life. Adam appeared at her side, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. "You should rest," he said quietly. "Jacob's preparing the spare room for us. Doctor can't make it until tomorrow at the earliest, but I think the worst is past." Molly accepted the coffee gratefully. "She'll need watching," she protested weakly. "The fever could return." "Sarah can manage now," Adam assured her. "You've done what needed doing. More than that, you've saved her life." The simple truth of his statement hit Molly with unexpected force. She had come west to make a difference, to find purpose. In this moment, that purpose had never been clearer. When they finally returned to the ranch 2 days later, Emily continuing to improve and the doctor confirming that Molly's actions had indeed been crucial, something had shifted between them. The shared experience of fighting for Emily's life had created a bond that transcended their growing romantic feelings, a partnership forged in crisis and strengthened by mutual respect. That evening, as they sat before the fire in Adam's cabin, the events of the past days seemed to have distilled something essential between them. "Watching you with Emily," Adam said, breaking a comfortable silence. "It made me realize something. Molly looked at him questioningly. You came west seeking independence, your own path, he continued. And I've spent years building this place, answering to no one but myself. He met her eyes directly. But what we did together for that child, we were stronger as a team than either of us could have been alone. Molly nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Independence isn't worth much if you're alone when it truly matters, she said softly. Adam reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. I know it's only been a few months, he said, his voice low and sincere. But I can't imagine my life without you in it now, Molly. I don't want to. The directness of his statement might have been shocking in another context, another time. But here, in this moment, after all they had shared, it felt right, a simple truth that needed acknowledgement. Nor I without you, Molly admitted, her heart racing but her mind clear. These months have taught me that independence doesn't mean isolation. It means choosing your own path and who walks it with you. Adam's smile was radiant as he moved from his chair to kneel before her. Molly Wilson, he said, still holding her hand. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not because you need someone to take care of you, you've proven beyond doubt that you can take care of yourself and others. But because I believe we're better together than apart, and I want to build a life with you at my side. Tears welled in Molly's eyes, not of sadness but of overwhelming joy. This was not the future she had imagined when she left St. Louis, but it was infinitely better, richer, more meaningful, more complete. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I will. Spring came early to the Arizona territory that year, bringing with it new beginnings. The small schoolhouse flourished, with enrollment growing to 23 students as word spread of the quality of education available. Adam's horse training business prospered as well, his reputation for fair dealing and quality animals extending throughout the region. On a perfect April day, with wildflowers carpeting the desert in unexpected color, Molly Wilson became Molly Westfield in a ceremony attended by neighbors, students, and even a few travelers who happened to be passing through. The Turners were there, Emily now fully recovered and proudly serving as flower girl, Sarah holding her new infant son born just weeks earlier. As they exchanged vows beneath an arch of twisted mesquite branches, Molly reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had left the East seeking independence and purpose, never imagining she would find both alongside love and partnership with a man whose strength matched her own. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Adam's kiss was a promise of respect, of partnership, of a future built together rather than separately. The celebration afterward was joyous, with music and dancing continuing well into the evening. As twilight settled over the land, Adam led Molly away from the festivities to a small rise overlooking the ranch. I have something to show you, he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice that Molly found endearing. At the top of the rise stood a new structure, a house larger than Adam's original cabin, with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides and windows designed to catch both the sunrise and sunset. Our home, Adam explained as Molly stared in amazement. If you like it. Been working on it whenever you were teaching, with help from neighbors. Molly walked slowly up the steps onto the porch, taking in the craftsmanship evident in every detail. Through the windows, she could see rooms already partially furnished with a mixture of pieces she recognized from Adam's cabin and new items she had never seen before. It's beautiful, she whispered, turning to him with tears in her eyes. When did you find time? Adam shrugged, though pride was evident in his expression. Found I didn't need as much sleep when I had something worth working toward. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. There's a room at the back that would make a fine nursery when the time comes. And space for the school to move here eventually, if you want. Room to grow in every sense. The thoughtfulness behind his planning touched Molly deeply. He had created not just a home, but a foundation for the future they would build together, one that honored both their individual passions and their shared vision. I love it, she said simply. And I love you, Adam Westfield. In the gathering darkness, with the sounds of celebration drifting up from below and the vast desert stretching to the horizon, Adam drew his wife into his arms. "When I found you behind that wagon," he said softly, "fevered and afraid but still fighting, I knew you were someone special. Never imagined you'd become my whole world." Molly smiled, remembering those desperate moments that now seemed like a lifetime ago. "You told me not to worry," she recalled. "Not while I'm here to guard your life," you said. Adam nodded, his expression solemn. "A promise I intend to keep," he said, "for all our days." As they stood together on the porch of their new home, Molly reflected on the strange workings of fate. She had come west seeking a new beginning, never imagining that illness and danger would lead her to the very future she was meant to find. What had seemed like misfortune had been, in fact, the first step on the path to true happiness, a path she would now walk with Adam by her side. Their lives intertwined in ways neither could have predicted, but both now treasured beyond measure. In the years that followed, the Westfield Ranch became known throughout the territory not only for its fine horses but also for its school, which grew to become a proper academy under Molly's guidance. Their family expanded as well, with the arrival of first a daughter and then twin sons, all of whom inherited their parents' love of learning and commitment to helping others. The silver boom at Silver Creek eventually faded, the town shrinking almost as quickly as it had grown when the veins played out. But the Westfield School endured, educating generations of children who carried its lessons throughout the changing frontier. And on quiet evenings, long after their children were grown with families of their own, Adam and Molly would still sit together on their porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson. Their hands clasped together in silent acknowledgement of the journey that had brought them to each other, a journey that began with illness and danger, but flowered into a lifetime of love, purpose, and shared dreams realized beneath the vast Arizona sky.